May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations. May we be inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and in miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to West Shore Unitarian Universalist Church. Whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever path you are on, you are very welcome here. Hold on a minute. Here today, in this place, and with these people, may we listen so that we can hear. May we hear so that we can feel. May we feel so that we can know. And may we know so that we can change ourselves and this world. May this chalice that we light our way. Okay? Thank you, Emily. Once again, welcome. We're very glad that you're here. We offer a very special welcome to our guest preacher this morning, Reverend Dr. Elaine Strawn. From growing up in a United Methodist parsonage, to service as a minister in both sides of the Cuyahoga, east and west, she has also worked for equal housing and in the family planning field. She has led the UU Fellowship in Wayne County in Worcester for 23 years, along with other UU responsibilities. Now semi-retired, she has a spiritual direction practice and chairs the commissioned lay ministry program in our Central East region. Welcome, Dr. Strawn. We have so many good things going on right now. Check out the West Shore Weekly in your order of service to learn about events coming up and how you can get involved. Let's now greet each other. If you see someone you haven't seen before, say hello. Make them feel welcome. And this is also the time for our children to go to their classes.
We come to this good morning, remembering the journey of freedom. The land we are on was once another's. We mourn the legacies of oppression. Healing is our way forward. Joy is the birthright of love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe. When I breathe in, I bring in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. Breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out.
I started teaching high school English when I was 21 years old. I had a college degree in English, nothing on education, absolutely no experience and no training, because those were the days when school systems were so desperate for teachers, because all of the children who had been born after World War II were hitting the high school years, and they needed anybody who was living and breathing and had a college degree. They didn't care. So there I was. I had 4 ninth grade classes, and you know what we did? We diagrammed sentences, and we read short stories by Jack London. Those were the days. Sitting in the front row, in the middle seat, in my very first morning class, was a girl named Becky Claxton. She was very shy, never said a word, and she was not, frankly, very physically attractive. She had only 2 outfits, which she alternated every other day, and she really appeared to have no friends that I had ever seen. But she was smart, and she did her homework every day, and it was always perfect. She kept her eyes down, never volunteered in class, and if I called on her, she mumbled that only I would be the one to hear her. I didn't really know her at all. But late in the football season that first year, I was sitting in the bleachers wishing I were any place else other than a football game. But Becky actually came up behind me, and she sat down beside me. We had a very stilted conversation. I can't remember a word of what she said, partly because I was just so surprised by her gesture. Something, though, was on her mind. I could tell, but I just didn't know what to say. After several pretty ineffective minutes of conversation, she went back to her seat behind me. I wondered, what was that all about? The next week in class, I tried to engage her again, but it wasn't happening. She avoided eye contact in class, and she only responded in her usual monosyllables. The moment was gone, and soon so was Becky. She never came back to school after the Christmas break. I asked around to find out what had happened to her, and I learned that she had had a baby and had dropped out of school. Becky would have been 14 years old, maybe 15. I missed an opportunity with someone who may have been asking for help, or maybe not. I'll never know. But that not knowing bothers me still after 60 years. The setting of a football game was not good. I got that. But I certainly could have been more skillful in engaging her somehow in a second conversation. But at least I have learned. Whenever someone says, "Can we talk?" whether it's a family member, an employee, or a friend, I am now on high alert for what the real purpose is. I think about Becky and how I should have listened, really listened.
We are here to learn from and to share with one another. I will bring the flame down to the center, and this is the time that we come to share those things that have happened during our week, the joyful things and those things of sorrow. These are the events and the concerns and the life flow that represent each of our lives, made more precious because we come to share them together. In the week ahead, Reverend McCarr will take what I should have picked up, which are your concerns and joys, and hold those in his thought, in prayer and meditation. This is our life as we sing together.
Good morning, West Shore. I, like most of you, like all of you, wear a number of different hats in my life, play a number of different roles, and here at West Shore, I wear the hat of membership and engagement coordinator. This is a role that I've gratefully had for over 2 years now, and it is my honor to serve this congregation and to do what I can to help it grow and thrive. I'm sorry, that anthem was so beautiful, I'm a little verklempt. Honestly, it's probably the best job of my life. I really enjoy it. And I got here by wearing another hat, the hat of new member that I put on some 10 years ago when I walked through the doors here at West Shore. It was Thanksgiving weekend of 2012, and I had never heard of Unitarian Universalism, and I was blown away by this spiritual home that I found. I'd been searching and looking for this place probably my entire life. I found a kind group of like-minded spiritual souls, and now I'm blessed as I look among you to call all of you friends. As with most places or groups, it sometimes takes a while to develop those friendships, and I chose a couple of ways to engage here with my newfound church. One of them was to join a connection circle, and the other one, I decided to attend my very first service auction. A service auction is something I had never heard of, like Unitarian Universalism, and it was very unknown to me. And for those of you that are new and have never heard of a service auction as well, basically it is a really great time. It is an event that we hold yearly that members and people from the church, they donate different parties and events, and we as participants come and we bid on those events. And it is probably, and today it is our largest fundraising event here at West Shore. So my husband and I, we attended our first service auction, and we had a great time meeting a lot of new people at that event, and we bid on some of those parties and attended those, and that gave us an opportunity to meet even more people. So my circle of friends grew, and I was very grateful for that. So I hope that this story piques your interest here about our service auction. As I transition, and I'm going to shamefully plug this, to another hat that I'm currently wearing here at West Shore as well, and that is of Service Auction Committee member. And in case you haven't heard or you haven't read your e-news, our service auction is just days away. It's happening on Friday, November 18th, and our theme this year is Denim, Diamonds, and Dancing, and it promises to be a fabulous night. I guarantee it. We're going to start off in Baker Hall and at 6 p.m., and we're going to have food and drinks and fellowship, a chance to meet people, and just have a really great time. And during that time as well, you'll have an opportunity to mingle among some of the other rooms here at West Shore and bid on some of our silent auction items and those events. At 8 o'clock, we're going to move into the sanctuary for an exciting live auction, which is always a hoot. It really is. It's a lot of fun. And our auctioneer, Bob Hale, will be putting some of the most sought-after parties and events up on the auction block. The bidding gets pretty competitive, like I said, and it really is a fun time. And then we end the evening by moving back into Baker Hall with a dazzling dessert buffet along with music and dancing. So if you haven't purchased your tickets yet, you can buy them on Realm. You can do so by calling the church or buy them at the door, but we really urge you to buy them in advance. And for today only, the very last day, you can purchase the early bird special of $40 a ticket. That includes a drink ticket as well. We'll have a table in the rotunda, and if you're interested and you have some parties or events that you'd like to do, we're still taking some last-minute donations for that as well. Just a note as well for all the parents out there, free childcare is provided. So this is a great opportunity for you to get out and enjoy an evening. We're planning a really fun pajama party for the kids with movies and pizza and so forth. So anyways, I hope that you'll come out and celebrate with us. It's been a long couple of years, hasn't it? Really. And this is the first time we're being able to hold this event in person. I'm not a hat person, can you tell? This is the first time we've been able to do it in person in 3 years. So we hope that you'll come and support the church, support this community, and join us for a really fun evening. Thank you. Our today's offering will be taken now and gratefully received. Thank you so much.
Diane took all her hats with her. I can't play with them. I want to thank the people that make it so easy to be here as a guest. David and Vicki and Sherry in the office and Christine doing technology and so many others, and all of you for being here to sit in community, for being here to build community. It's so important. And I believe that the energy is symbolized in our chalice and the energy that's accumulated as we gather makes a difference in a world that needs that energy. Thank you. So I want to start by reading two texts. Well, the first one I will just share with you because I know that you know the story. It comes from the Hebrew Bible, the 3rd chapter of 1 Samuel. And it's that great story of Eli, who is the rabbi and the teacher. And he's the teacher of little Samuel, who is brought to the temple to learn to become deeply spiritual and a teacher. And you know how the story goes. He goes to sleep, and he hears a voice, Samuel, here I am. Or Samuel, here I am. And so Samuel, being an obedient young child, goes to Eli, the teacher, and says, here I am, what do you need? And Eli, waking up from his sleep, says, I didn't call you. Go back to sleep. And the second time, Samuel hears the voice, Samuel, hear my voice. And so he runs, this time sure that he's right, that Eli has called him. And once again, Eli says, I did not call you. Go back to sleep. And the third time, Samuel recognizes that the voice is coming from somewhere not right in that temple. And he says, "Here I am, Lord." That's the rough story. But it's a story about deep, deep listening. And the second story also comes from the Jewish tradition, and Rachel Naomi Remen, you know, as a doctor and a healer in so many ways, but she's also, in one of her most important pieces of biography, I think, is that she is the granddaughter of a rabbi, a Hasidic rabbi who studies the Kabbalah. And so this is what she writes. My grandfather was an Orthodox rabbi, a student of the Kabbalah. He would sit at his library table reading Kabbalah, and I'd sit under the table playing with his velvet slippers. I spent a lot of time like that. One of these stories was the Lamed Vav. The story basically says that God will only allow the world to continue as long as there is a minimum of 36 people in the human race who are able to respond to the suffering of total strangers. And should at any time in the human race there be fewer than 36 such people, the world comes to an end and the human race experiment has failed. I remember hearing this story and thinking, who are they? I was 4 and had just learned about movie stars, so I was sure that those were the ones. But I asked, who are they, Grandpa? He said, nobody knows who they are. They themselves don't even know. Even you. You might be a member of the 36, so you must behave as though you are. You can see the moral of the story. Then I began thinking about these people who had to respond to suffering. I mean, what if it was too much for them? What would happen? Then the world would be gone, and even my little kitten and me would be gone. I became really frightened. I was a timid little girl. And so I said, Grandpa, what is it that they have to do? Is it very hard? What would happen if they couldn't do it, those 36 people? And he laughed and said, they don't have to do anything. They just have to have the capacity to feel compassion for the suffering of people they don't even know, people whose language is different, whose faces are different, whose lives are different. They just have to have the capacity to feel compassion for their suffering as if it were their own. Both stories have to do with being a presence. Last week, Reverend McCarr talked to you some about listening. In the second part of his sermon, he talked about what happens when we share our grief stories or our grief drawings with another. And what should the response be? What if someone shares that with me? What should my response be? And his answer was, tell me more. You were listening. That's great. Tell me more. You don't have to do anything. You are doing the most magnificent thing. You are listening. You're being a witness. Let's take the two texts apart just a little bit. Now, Eli's family had done terrible things in Israel, and God was mad. And so what God really had to tell Samuel is, you will become my prophet, and Eli's family will suffer. That's a lot for a little boy to take in. Story about his teacher. But he listened, and he was able to listen beyond just, it's Eli, the only other being in the building, that's calling me. He was able to listen deeply even within himself. That's an important part. And he was able to listen to an uncomfortable truth. And then it went even farther. Then when Eli the next day said, well, what was the message? Samuel, this little boy, has to say to his teacher, not good things are going to happen. God is angry at your family. Think about what it takes to be that witness. But Eli is a fabulous teacher, and he says, so may it be, God is just. That's not a direct translation. But that's what he said. Rachel Naomi Rumman, a little girl, and she says, my whole family, all of my grandfather's children would just roll their eyes. They were doctors and scientists and mathematicians, and here's this guy reading the Kabbalah with all of its mysterious numbers. But the little girl, Rachel Naomi Rumman, is drawn to that sense of the unexpected, to that sense of mystery, to that deeper meaning in things, to this man whom she can ask those deepest questions. And he will answer from within his soul, from within his calling. That's a gift that we give to one another. Douglas Shear writes in Gleanings, to listen another soul into a condition of disclosure and discovery may be the most important and greatest service that any human being ever performs for another. Let me read it one more time. To listen another soul into a condition of disclosure and discovery may be almost the greatest service that any human being can perform for another. So it's listening. So of course I've been thinking a lot about listening. I was thinking about the kind of listening that I used to do when our high schoolers would come home from school, and you know how that happens. They come and you're busy, you're making dinner, you're finishing, you're whatever, you're writing, you're doing whatever, and they're filled with stories, and they want to tell you, and they say, and then she goes, and then he goes, and then this happened, blah, 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 blah. And I'm listening with this all in response. Uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. That's not the kind of listening that we're talking about. When I worked at Fair Housing in Akron, it was my job to do mediation between landlords and tenants, and the phone line was always full. And I found myself, again, not listening. Someone would call, and it was an oft-repeated question, something about security deposits, something about who has to fix what. And I was so used to the question, I would start to answer the question before the questioner was finished. That's not the kind of listening that we're talking about. Diane Millis, who took some lessons from narrative coaching, talks about what good conversation partners are, and she says this: they help us to notice aspects of our stories that have particular energy for us. They ask us meaningful questions that invite us to step back from the action and to reflect on our wishes, our motivations, our values. They encourage us not to settle for thin narratives. They encourage us to listen for the enigmatic expression of the Spirit. I love that phrase. The enigmatic energy of the Spirit, whose meaning isn't readily apparent and continues to be revealed over time. And wise conversation partners encourage us to practice staying open to everything we experience, letting the sharpness of difficult times pierce us to the heart. Folks, we are getting ready for a week of news and listening. We are getting ready for a week that may break our hearts and may make us sing. We are getting ready to hear results and commentaries on results and what that means. That's something to get ready for. And at the end of the week, we as a nation will be remembering our veterans. people who have given so much in the military and in other ways also, given their lives often. And so at the times when I think, oh, it's listening, for heaven's sakes, Elaine, it is simply listening, I think about those two things. I think about the neighbor next door, and on Wednesday, he and I will try to keep the conversation to what kind of mulch we're putting on the garden, because it's one of the few things that we can talk about and listen to and increase our relationship. But I also know what kind of healing can happen. I've looked at the research that talks about what having witnesses can do to heal a broken heart, a broken soul, what it can do to heal relationships. The research on what listening, having a witness, does for people suffering with PTSD, for veterans, friends who were in the Vietnam War, who said, if I had come home on a ship with other soldiers with whom to share the stories, I would have had a witness. My reorientation to civilian life might have been so different. I think of the women in Darfur who risked their lives every time they had to go get water at the community well for their families. And the research that says time and time again, if those women had people who would listen to their stories, a lot of that internalized effect could be lightened and they could start to heal. People who really listened, not people who said, oh, you shouldn't feel so hurt, or, gosh, I'm sorry, that happened to everybody. People who witnessed, people who heard. So David Draken, who does narrative coaching and is the person from, well, we'll get to that in a minute, says, in my experience, it does not matter which stories people choose to share first. They will begin at the level at which they're ready, and the critical themes will be forthcoming regardless of where they begin. And so, the person that is at the center of this whole sacred listening piece within the spiritual direction community is Diane Millis, who's written several books and does a lot of training, but her real quest was to learn how to listen deeply to her spiritual direction client. And so she looked into narrative therapy, looked into how to start listening. And this is a piece of what she says. You begin with the question, which days from your life would you like to explore further? To recreate the stories you tell yourself. She talks about a very simple process. And the process is, you tell a story, one from your own life to a listener. And the listener takes that in deeply and asks questions. I wonder why, when you were talking about your daughter's bicycle accident when she was 4, why you were looking out the window and watching the clouds. It's like you had left the room. I wonder why, when you were talking about your father, you were playing with the ring on your finger. I wonder. I'm really interested in your experience of having walked through the woods on a stormy day and noticed the world seeming to come in on you. And then the teller gets to repeat, gets to take those in. So it's that combination, and then there's a period of silence. So I outline that for this reason. I'm aware that one of the times that I put some boundaries up when it feels like a really big story is coming. I don't know if I want to hear that or not. I don't really want to know you that well. That's going to sound painful. She says, we don't respond with, maybe you should, or let me help you, or my experience in that same place is, it's like Rachel Naomi Remen's father. The 36 don't have to do anything. I don't have to fix it. I don't have to fully understand it. I have to be a witness. I have to ask about it. I have to be with you in the midst of it. I'm really kind of tired of hearing about how broken our world is and our country is. I'm not tired of it because I don't believe it. I'm tired of it because it just feels like it's looming and getting bigger, as opposed to we're starting to build, we're starting to change, we're starting to learn. And I guess I want to challenge us to be part of that change. If we respect the sacredness of the others who are telling us their stories, if we refrain from offering our own interpretations and advice, just listen. If we can remain curious, what a fabulous skill curiosity is. But we're Unitarian Universalists, right? We are curious people. And if we remind one another that our stories are never complete or finished. Kay Lendl says in The Sacred Art of Listening, as we discern how to respond to one another, we shift our focus from what do I want to say, my ego, to what wants to be said from the soul. One more quote. Margaret Wheatley, such a great community organizer in the whole world, reminds us that human conversation is the most ancient and easiest way to cultivate conditions for change. Personal change, community change, organizational change, planetary change, if we can sit together and talk about what's important to us. We begin to come alive. We share what we see, what we feel, and we listen to what others see and feel. If I can calm my ego. I'm always fascinated what my ego does. Not my ego, I'm so important. My ego, the ego function, the executive function that gets me out of bed in the morning, makes my list, gets me through my day, that one. When I sit down for my moments of quiet meditation, it will not shut up. It goes through lists and lists and lists. If it's not what email I need to answer, it's what needs to be done in the garden. And if it's not that, maybe today's the day we need to bake bread, or who needs to be taken to the doctor, or are you up to date in your vaccinations? It's full of them. It will not let me rest. And then I bring it back. Buddhism was such a great teacher for me. I don't yell. I don't condemn myself. I don't wish my ego weren't there. I need it. I just come back to that place of right now we're just listening. Right now we're just being. Our egos can be so very hard on us. So the very first place is ourselves. As we head off to become the listening healers of the world, John O'Donohue in Anam Cara writes, there is a voice within you which no one, not even you, has ever heard. Give yourself the opportunity of silence and begin to develop your listening in order to hear. deep within yourself, the music of your own spirit. Be your own witness. What's the story I tell me about myself? Who might I invite to listen to that story? And what might they offer me back? That story about when I failed at something, what might a gentle witness ask me? I wonder. I'm interested in. That might help me to unpack that story that has been so debilitating, to open it up, to look at it differently from a different sphere, a different spot. And what we know is that everything affects everything. Physics. Everything affects everything else. When I become more generative and less critical of myself, I have so much more energy to be the healer and the witness to and of others. Our stories, Diane Millis writes, are like prisms. In order to see the fullness of a prison, we have to hold it up into the light. We have to turn it over. We have to examine it from every single direction. Optimally, when we tell our stories, we do the same. We hold our narratives up to the light. We turn them over. We examine them in every direction. And we get the fullest dimension. We need other people to help us see the light in our own story. So we have the skills it takes to begin to heal a broken world. We have what it takes to get us through family conversations at Thanksgiving dinner. That's coming up too. I didn't mention that one. We have what it takes to get through conversations with the next door neighbor and to help to heal people whose history has not been witnessed and are suffering. But it's an Olympic sports kind of listening that we have to do. One more example. Nell Morton was a role model. She was a professor at the seminary in Claremont in California, and she has an incredible way of writing and of telling stories. This is this one. The day of the workshop, the woman whose name I do not know wandered off alone. As we gathered somewhere later in small groups, she started to talk in a hesitant, almost awkward manner. I hurt, she began. I hurt all over. She touched herself in various places before she added, but I don't know where to begin to cry. I don't know how to cry. Hesitantly, she began to talk. Then she talked more and more. Her story took on fantastic coherence. When she reached a point of the most excruciating pain, no one moved. No one interrupted her. No one rushed to comfort her. No one cut her experience short. We simply sat. We sat in the powerful silence. The women gathered around the one who was weeping, went with her to the deepest part of her life, as if something so sacred was taking place. They did not withdraw their presence nor mar its visibility. Finally, the woman whose name I did not know finished speaking. Tears flowed from her eyes in all directions. She spoke again. You heard me. You heard me all the way. Her eyes narrowed. She moved around the group again, and she said, I have a strange feeling that you heard me even before I started. You heard me to my own story. You heard me to my own speech. We have that power. We have it inside. We simply need to have the courage, sometimes to reach across to people we really don't want to have to listen to. But it's what our spiritual discipline requires of us. The reciprocity. I listen to your story. I'm clearer about my own. We have that kind of reciprocity. Frederick Buechner wrote, "My story is important, but not because it's mine. God knows, because if I tell it, the chances are that you will recognize that in so many ways, it's also yours." We share our joys and concerns with one another. We share our lives with one another. It's why we're here. It's how we grow. I'm going to extinguish the chalice, but I know that that light doesn't go out. I know that that light is flaming boldly and brightly in each one of you. The 36 people and beyond. The witnesses, the listeners, the healers. May I live this day, says John Donahue, compassionate of heart, clear in word, gracious in awareness, courageous in thought, and oh, so generous in love.